Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, a show about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 learners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I can't honestly remember having a fixed profession in mind. I think I used to spend quite a lot of time pretending to be a teacher with my various, dolls and younger siblings. But no, I don't know. I don't think I've ever had like a strong sense of direction or ambition, which is probably, that's you. If you look now back at my CV, it's that's evident because I've moved around a bit. But I think it's, kind of everything that I've done is aligned to my values, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really stray that much. I've done a variety of roles, but all vaguely in the same kind of sectors and with the same outcomes in mind. So I don't know. I wasn't particularly driven in any one direction as a child.
So what was like your first job? What was your first sort of working experience? And was that something that you liked? Did that influence where you later went? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, my very first few years of work, which were great, were in hospitality, I guess, like in a local. I'm from a very rural community, so there's not many options there for work as a, teenager, but we do have tourism. So, I worked in our family cafe during the day and I worked in a pub at night, and I worked, really, really hard in those jobs, but I loved them both. I loved especially the pub at night. I think that was just fun, basically. For a young person, that was fun. But in terms of a real kind of career after I graduated, my first job was actually in Leeds Market, working on a health promotion stall there. It was a really nice first job. And I was paid to run this stall, which was, broadly around health promotion, but I could kind of take it how I wanted to take it. And I focused a lot on food and we had a kitchen there. So it was just really nice to buy produce from the other market stalls and make food and then tell people how you'd made it and give out recipes. And we had over the time I was there, we built like a really nice community of people who regularly visited the stall, and we did like health walks around Leeds from the stall, and we got other kind of professionals in to come and talk about what they do. And it was, that was a lovely introduction to proper work, I guess. And I saw it in my mind. I mean, so that was nice. And that was my first introduction to working in charities, I guess, and appreciating the autonomy that you can get in certain roles within charities. You're not heavily governed by bureaucracy and layers of authority that you have to
regulation and
exactly. So it's nice. I've always done kind of similar roles after that, actually, like coordinator roles where I have one, pretty small but distinct remit to focus on, and I have a lot of autonomy in that role to deliver how I want to deliver.
You're listening to Series 3, Episode 24, and to my guest, Laura McCullagh. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 4th of May 2022. Hello, loves. Welcome to Radio 4 from Hell. Laura McCullagh has worked for 15 plus years in the voluntary sector, starting her career in Leeds, then Edinburgh, London, and back to Leeds again. Laura has worked in a range of organisations and roles, generally advocating for the rights of groups that are often regarded as vulnerable and experience exclusion, discrimination, and unfair treatment, e.g. people who are homeless, in poverty, facing addiction, poor mental health, or involvement in the criminal justice system. Originally from a remote village in the Yorkshire Dales, she has a particular interest in rural mental health and mental health stigma in rural communities. Her current role involves working with employers and business owners to help improve understanding of mental health, promote inclusion of people with mental health difficulties in the workforce, and develop workplace cultures and practices that are positive for staff well-being. Leeds Mindful Employer Network is a peer support network enabling local employers to learn more about mental health and well-being at work. Through the network, Laura promotes the National Mindful Employer Initiative, which allows employers to sign the Mindful Employer Charter for employers positive about mental health. If you're interested in the Mindful Employer Initiative, go to leadsmind.org.uk/help-for-employers/mindful-employer-Leeds. Now, please enjoy this episode of Working Hours with Laura McCullagh. What is it that you're doing now?
So my job now is with Leeds Mind, and it's coordinating the Mindful Employer Network in Leeds and West Yorkshire. So it's a network of all sorts of local employers and businesses who are interested in mental health and well-being at work. So it's a very diverse network, and it's great because so many different industries are represented there and different sectors, and they come together in our events to share their good practice, what they're really proud of in terms of how they're looking after their staff, and also their challenges. And it's designed to be a bit of a peer support network really for employers to share what they're doing and learn from each other. And over the last 2 years of the pandemic, I think well-being has just kind of become a massive topic where really increased its profile, where it wasn't so much before. So it's been a good, obviously amid all the tragedy, it's it's been a good time in terms of raising awareness of mental health and well-being, and tackling stigma and making mental health an everyday conversation, really kind of normalizing those experiences and helping people to feel comfortable opening up and getting help when they need it. So yeah, it's quite broad really. And I have conversations about a lot of different things with employers, but and a lot of it really strongly relates to inclusion and diversity and to culture within organizations. So yeah, if you've got a culture that is open and inclusive and accepting of everyone, then I think it's pretty inevitable that you're more likely to have higher levels of well-being and mental health within your staff teams.
I mean, you can soon sort of detect the kind of tone of a workplace when you start. So yeah, and then that does affect your kind of impression of the job. So how did that come about, and how did you get into it?
I've previously worked in the voluntary sector, as I said, in lots of different roles. But I think most recently, before this role, I done a community development role in London, and the focus was financial inclusion, which you might think is quite different to mental health, but in actual fact, there's so many crossovers, and we were supporting people in poverty with their benefits claims and accessing food banks, and their mental health was the biggest casualty of that poverty. And so I guess, and that was very much focused on the power of networks and the community to come together. And we trained up lots of community money champions, we called them. And they were people who went out of their way to have conversations with their neighbours and with their family members about money, because it is a stigmatized, kind of uncomfortable topic for people. Just to get people talking, opening up, sharing experiences of debt, and acknowledging that it's something that so many people have to deal with, and spreading the message that there was free debt advice out there, because a lot of people were having sleepless nights worrying about debt when and being targeted by loan sharks or targeted by private companies selling their services. When in actual fact there was some really great free debt advice that they could access that they didn't know about. So that was kind of my first introduction to the power of networks and the community to support each other. And I guess that's what I found attractive in this role, because even though it's quite a different network, it's the same ethos and the same principles of peer support and people, learning from each other, with my role being very much a facilitator. You know, I'm not an expert in any of it, but I can bring people together and facilitate, create that safe, inclusive space for people to share and learn and support each other.
Cool. So, I mean, you obviously enjoy this work and the work that you've gone into. Like, what are the kind of downsides of the role?
The downsides, definitely the lack of funding and the impingements on my capacity. It's hard. It's really hard to see what can be done, but know that you don't have the time and the resource to implement it, or, you know, to make progress how you'd want to make progress. So I think that's a shame, but I think it's a very common experience, certainly in our sector. And I think there definitely is a conversation to be had about the voluntary sector and our role and how low we are prepared to bid for some of these contracts. You know, it's so competitive now with the way that contracts are attended, and it's often that you know, it feels like it's that race to the bottom. How much can we promise for however little, for the lowest possible money, and that isn't. I don't think that's healthy for the quality of the work that you produce or for your own well-being, because you end up feeling that stress. And certainly with myself, I'm the only person working on this project. It's all on me, and it's quite isolated in that respect. I have a great manager and I work for a great organisation. There's a lot of support there, but it's very much I'm relying on my own motivation and
and it's like nobody. It's like that thing, because you're the only one working on it. Nobody really knows what you do. They're like, oh well, this is sort of what you do, and isn't this you? This is your kind of stuff, but you can't really go into detail about whatever issue, because it's like, well, nobody else really knows. Can't really share this with.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll start off, and I think it's probably relevant here. I have on previous episodes, I've talked about sort of wellness and well-being and so on. And obviously it came up as I recorded through the pandemic. So take us through your kind of lockdown journey. Were you in this role when we went into lockdown?
Yeah, I just started. Well, I think I'd moved up to Leeds in the December before 2019, and then I started my job in January, and then obviously March, April we went into lockdown. So I was quite new in post at that point. So how was that? Was that just sort of, were you with a kind of the office drove it, or you were quite prepared, or you made the decision for yourself that you were going to sort of work from home early, or was it just it went into lockdown and then you were at home, and like, were you able to work? Were you doing more work? Were you doing less work? Or I don't think I've ever been as productive as I was in those first few months of lockdown. I mean, it was crazy, but it was an amazing sense of drive. You know, I don't know where it came from, and I know other people have said the same thing. You just felt this energy. The energy that came from that time, like wanting to contribute. In a way, it was exciting. The change was exciting. Working from home was such a novelty, and it was really stressful. I mean, I have a toddler, and me and my husband were, we couldn't. The toddler, he wasn't able to be by himself. He wasn't an older kid that could occupy himself. So, we had to completely just abandon all work, all our understanding of standard working hours, and just split it so that one of us was always with him, the other one working. And we ended up doing one of us would start at 7 a.m, and the other one finish at 7 p.m. And it was just, we worked really, really hard, but it wasn't looking, even though it was a challenge, my memory of that time isn't negative. And that feels bad to say that, because obviously it was a terrible time for so many people. But I think it helped us, it was just, the weather was good. I think the weather was a massive plus the fact that we'd moved up from London, where we'd had a flat with very little outdoor space, and now we had a little garden. So we were really, appreciating the garden and feeling just very lucky, and feeling that we didn't couldn't really moan because we were aware of how much we had and the fact that we did have work, and our employers were flexible enough, and we weren't furloughed. We had our garden. The weather was nice. It wasn't too bad. And
yeah, it didn't feel like a massive imposition. It was more like a sort of reasonable sacrifice.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And just the newness of it was really nice. Like that break in the routine and the slog of the 9 to 5 it was just so kind of, I don't know, exciting's not the right word, but you know what I mean? It was, the newness of that was really nice. And even starting work at 7, and then finishing at 10, doing a 3-hour stint, and then having, 4 hours in the middle of the day with the toddler and then another 3 hours later on. That just breaking up the day was nice. It was just, it was refreshing and a nice change. And I think it's the autonomy, where you're trusted to do what you do to get on without having someone saying, you start at this time and you finish at this time, and what are you doing if you're not working? I think I responded well to that. It motivated me to be trusted and to have the freedom to work out my day how I needed to work it out.
Yeah. So do you think, has that left any lasting changes? Are you still working from home? Are you on a hybrid model, or like, has it changed your attitude to sort of how you do like flexi time? Or, I mean, what's it changed for you work-wise?
I think it's amazing how normalized working from home has become. And I've certainly appreciated that. I'm still working at home about 70%, 60 to 70% of my time. I'm going into the office 1 day a week, and then the times I might have meetings out with employers in the city centre or, in the community. So it feels nice. For me, it feels like a nice balance. I feel like my employer has been very gentle and understanding in terms of getting people back to the office and how that's being communicated and how it's, being enforced, I guess. But at the end of the day, that everyone is aware now that there is that expectation that you're going to be in a minimum amount of time. And I think that's been quite helpful, even though I haven't appreciated it at the time. And on that, sometimes on the day that I have to be in the office, I really resent having to get up and get out. But I know I wouldn't do it voluntarily. So it's quite good for me to have that kind of pressure to do it, because I always, I appreciate it once I'm in. It's really, I know that it's good for my wellbeing to be out of the house, to be with colleagues and just having different conversations. But I think certainly for a lot of families, and probably women in particular, the practical ease of being able to work from home and, it's made things a lot easier and less stressful. But I don't know, there's a part of me that thinks it's not healthy for, in terms of progress for women in the workplace. In some ways it's blurred home and work, even more, and even put even more expectation on women to do everything and juggle everything, and that's stressful. So I don't know, but for me it's working at the minute.
So let's talk about your work-life balance then. And like, did you have, where did you work when you went into lockdown? Was it sort of like you both had to share space on the kitchen table, or you had a room to work in, or you've both got a room that you can work in? Like, how have you created that space?
Well, we were lucky to have a very small spare room, which was great. We didn't have to do the working on the kitchen table.
Does that help? I mean, I think it would help. I think it helps massively to have this sort of separate. You do need the separation. You do need a separate space.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. It's not. I hate. It doesn't feel healthy to be taking your work into your home, your home space.
Or especially your bedroom.
Yeah. It's not. I don't think that's good, and I really feel for people who've had to do that. It's, for me, however much I might enjoy my work, it's always work, and it's always, it's always me separating from my home life. And so, that spare room was great. It was mouldy. It was it had awful damp on the walls. It's not the same house we're in now. It was a horror. It wasn't a nice space, but it was at least separate from
Yeah.
the rest of the house. Yeah.
How was the winter lockdown?
I don't know.
It's long. I remember it just long. Well, that's the other thing. Like I've said this to other people. Like I feel like time's totally collapsed since the lockdown. It's just like, when did that happen? What was going on?
Yeah.
What day is it now?
I know. So did we just have one? We had one summer lockdown, first one, and then Then we went back into lockdown in the winter of that.
Well, it kind of. So my reading of it would be, we go in early March, and then there's various sort of reinterpretations and adjustments and things that go on, and then it's kind of. Then we had the Barnard Castle. Then more people started coming out, but more people were kind of starting to come out anyway. And then it kind of opened up, and then there was the eat out to help out. Yeah. So we had the end of summer where we were like open, and then we went into like the tiers and stuff, didn't we? Yeah. And so it was like, oh, well, they're closed, but we're open, but we're kind of open. But people kind of weren't really caring at that point. Like there was lots of people caring, but there was also lots of people like, I'm done with this now. I went outside and did stuff. And then we went into the winter lockdown, and that just went on forever. Yeah. It's just like, oh God, this is so dull. And and you just knew it was utter chaos in sort of hospitals and stuff. But yeah.
I know. I cannot believe, thank you. That was a really good reminder. I cannot believe how it was. It's awful. I remember, when you just think back, I remember we arranged to meet some friends in Ripon. They were coming down from the northeast, and we were coming from Leeds, and we thought it was a good place to meet, and they were in tier 2 at that point, and we were in tier 3. And I just remember us feeling like we were doing something so wrong, like just meeting up to say hello to some friends in the outdoors. And they were allowed, I think in tier 2 at that point, you were allowed to sit in cafes, but we were thinking, well, are we allowed to go into this cafe?
And are they higher risk now because they're in that area of like, do we want to go into this cafe with them? Is that festive?
Yeah. Oh, it's just weird. But yeah, the winter I think was hard. Definitely the fact that it was coupled. Yeah, the fact that you weren't allowed to sit in anywhere, and it was cold. It was miserable.
It was dark.
It
was so long. I mean, I've complained about going into work in winter, sort of getting up in the dark, coming home in the dark, and cramped buses and wetness and coldness and colds. But yeah, I mean, after that lockdown of I think there's something to be said for being able to go into an office even in winter, just like break up the darkness.
It was horrible. And even I think even this winter I've really struggled with the weather, with the season, just the season. I think my mood's lifted so much with the move into spring, but I think that that isn't COVID related really. But last year, well, that time we were in lockdown through winter, that was
yeah. So it's kind of like, I don't think it would happen again. I think that was a sort of one-off, because I don't think we're willing to do it again.
No.
Yeah. It was very strange. So I'll move off this. Although I will ask you, have you had COVID?
No, not yet. I'm fully expecting to get it at some point, but
that's it. It sort of chases around everyone, doesn't it? And like loads of people that avoided it for sort of 2 years, and it's like, oh, now it's all got me. And yeah. Okay, so I'll stay in sort of grim. I'll stay in the kind of more political, more dark end of the questions, and then I'll bring it up.
Okay.
So I want to just ask. So it's a Brexit question. So how has Brexit affected your work? Have you noticed any change? Have you noticed any different in either what you're doing, what you can do, or how you do it?
It hasn't affected me directly, but it has come up certainly in the conversations I've had with employers, because it's been for certain industries, it's added to the strain of finding work, finding staff shortages. And I think all these kind of logistical problems and problems with, workforce problems, they all have a knock-on effect that can impact on well-being. So yeah, I know that it has affected certain industries, and it is relevant to the conversations that I have. But for me personally, it hasn't made a difference. I don't think. I mean, it obviously affects your psychology. Knowing what's going on makes you feel this general air of like depression sometimes. But yeah, not day to day.
Okay, so now I shall go on to what am I going to do next? We'll do the climate change question because I think it sort of stays in a similar area. So, I mean, the question, I use climate change, obviously it's a big issue, the big issue, or one of them. But I also use it as a kind of, to represent the sort of the whole kind of ecological aspect of work. So is there anything that you can do in your role to either affect or adapt or mitigate sort of climate change? What steps can you take? How much resource can you kind of use on that? And is it even something that you can afford to spend any time on or do anything with? Or is it more just, I can't think about that, I've just got to be out helping people and building this? And like, what's your working response to climate change? I suppose it's a question.
I think we have thought about it when I've been planning my activities for the year ahead, and we've certainly thought about it in the context of how much we continue to live in the virtual world and put on virtual events and have virtual meetings as opposed to face-to-face, because as soon as you start doing face-to-face, you've got to start thinking about, well, where are people going to park their cars? How accessible is this? Is it on a bus route? Because we want to encourage people to use public transport. So certainly, I think it is. I mean, it's something I do think about a lot, and I don't have a car, and I try and cycle wherever, where I can, or I'll get the bus. And certainly, yeah, like it's there. It's not, I don't think it's given the prominence that it deserves, but it is a consideration. I guess I haven't really thought through the links, the direct links with well-being and mental health, other than the fact that we know that exercise and being outside is good for well-being. So, that's something that I do talk about with employers. You could say, I have conversations about what opportunities are there for staff to get out but often it's not, it's all, some employers will say, oh yeah, we have a lunchtime running club, or we go out for walks, and it's obviously very nice, but they're not thinking about the climate in those decisions. They're thinking about the physical well-being elements. So I think there's definitely more that can be done to promote active transport, so walking and cycling for well-being, but also equally for the environment, to come on to give it equal weight. And I don't think people are thinking about the environment as much as they need to be when they're weighing up those decisions of how they get to work and what's good for their health. I mean, a lot of people will drive to a gym to do their workout, whereas if they really kind of put priority on the environment, they might go for a run from their door or something. You know what I mean? I don't want to be judgmental.
No, I know exactly what you mean. It's like the sort of obvious benefits and the sort of quick wins, low hanging fruit kind of, but then you come up against the reality of the environment, like the built environment of like, if you were on a business park, industrial estate somewhere, and basically when you go outside, it's just all lorries, and it's like, it's whether you've got that green space nearby or you can get to it. And then it's the question of, well, is that the employer's responsibility, or should that be more from the civic side and the political side? Like, should that be sort of a state-led, like they should create the spaces and public spaces rather than private spaces that people can go to, which I mean, Leeds does have a lot of good sort of places to go and have your lunch outside and stuff and sit on a wall and, but yeah, it does bring up all those questions. And then you've got, from a well-being side as well, you've got kind of climate anxiety. And how that affects people and how that affects the workforce as well, in terms of, I've talked to a lot of kind of sustainable and sustainability kind of enterprises recently. What am I saying with this? Where am I going? I'm forgetting my point. I can't remember. Anyway, I'll let that go. So yeah, I'll let you respond if you've got any response to
that. No, I mean, it's not really related to work, but I'm just thinking about with the election coming up tomorrow, and that I've just been surprised at how little, how even the Green Party, that what their proposals are, I still feel really, really tame and not very strong. And I think, that's probably a sign of where the general population are at with their thinking. So it's a bit depressing really to think that there is still so far that we need to go in terms of winning over people. And,
but I think that's media led. I think there is a big appetite for change and for new ways of doing things. And I think a lot of people, I think as much as anything, some of the job shortages and labor shortages and stuff, it's kind of like, well, I don't want to do that dirty, unsustainable job. I don't want to be working all day making things worse. Like if I can avoid, but I mean, you're not going to hear that in the press because it doesn't benefit them to sell that, does it? So
yeah, I'm sure you're right. And that's a more optimistic way of looking at it in terms. I mean, I think I'm sure you're right. It's not that people don't care, and it's often like you said, there's an equality issue here. It's not. Some people can afford to make ethical choices, other people can't, and they're heavily constrained because of where they live, and because the bus, the public transport in Leeds is terrible. Certainly for me coming from London, where it was great, and there's so much investment, and there's so much to be done to make it easier for people to make those decisions for the environment.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, so I'll move on to the social media question. So the question is really about how much time does social media take up in your role? Like how much has it kind of taken up of your work time, and what benefit do you see from that? Is the benefit sort of immediately obvious? Can you see like the results, and is it really effective, and is it a good use of your time, and how much do you have to do it?
Right. Yeah, it is something that I feel I have to do. I don't like using social media. I feel it sucks. It sucks the life out of me. It's like a hole that you get sucked into, and I haven't got it right. I know that there's a balance. There will be a value in it. For me, it's about engaging employers. So there will be some value in reaching new audiences through social media. But I haven't worked out what the balance is in terms of the time that I put into it, and what I actually get out of it, and how much time is worth putting into it. Because I think you can end up just sitting there for ages on these platforms, and often, and I think it's what I'm realizing is that the different platforms operate quite differently, and with Twitter, which I find the easiest to use in terms of just usability, and I feel like that's just so often an echo chamber, and everyone that likes and retweets my tweets are the same people each time, and for that, there I think, well, what's the value in this? I'm letting other people know what I'm doing. I'm seeing what other people are doing. Maybe that warrants about 15 minutes a day max. LinkedIn is another one that I haven't really got to grips with. I don't really like. I don't feel like it's user friendly. I don't. But I know that there are, in terms of business networks, perhaps it's a good one for employers. What we're trying now, which is Facebook, a new one, to try and reach different people. So I think, there's from some of the conversations I've had with people, we want to reach out to smaller businesses. And I think a lot of smaller businesses might be part of community Facebook groups. And we're hoping that Facebook is going to be more effective in reaching those smaller local businesses that might not care for LinkedIn or Twitter, but that do have a presence in Facebook. So we just launched a new kind of Facebook page, and then a group for our network members, which we'll see if it attracts people's attention or not. But hopefully it could be very useful, because they could, it's a platform for me to quickly upload information and share stuff, also for people to interact and to kind of learn from each other and share things. So I'd like that to be a success. And I'm happy to, if I see that happening, if I see people interacting and getting something out of that, I'm going to be more inclined to put the energy into it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But generally, I don't know about, I haven't made my mind up about how useful social media is, especially not when you consider how much time you put into it.
It's really hard to tell, I think, when you're doing it, because I've talked to a lot of people that with this question, and it can be really hard to tell. And then obviously I talk to people who are like, they do it as a job kind of thing, and it's like, but I know these effects and how many people they can reach. A lot of the time it's about reach. Like, you sort of read a lot of the time that it's about engagement, but it's kind of people are seeing your stuff, but they're not necessarily engaging with it. They're not necessarily telling you that you like it. So it's keeping you present in their mind, but you don't necessarily know what that presence is.
No.
Well, do you like me or do you not like me?
Yeah.
Surely if you like, you should like. Press like. You like. Go on, sorry. You sound like you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to agree, really. You don't know what people are meaningful kind of that people are taking from it. And then perhaps like, on LinkedIn, you can write more. And, sometimes I find myself writing like, it's almost like a blog post on LinkedIn. And it's a bit, you can be quite self-indulgent there and just put something out there and you hope that someone's going to read it. But if they do, at least they're getting something more in depth than what they can get on Twitter, which is so limited. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not convinced.
I'd say that it's really good. Like, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but, sort of if you're writing a long piece on LinkedIn or whatever, and you're doing, you're kind of repeating similar sort of things, I feel like it does give you the advantage of you're kind of refining your copy, refining your pitch, like saying, you say the same thing over and over again, and then you kind of think there's a better way to say that. I can say that shorter. And so I do think it does help to organize your thoughts in a way, but then in another way, it helps to disorganize your thoughts, because you're like, where's that gone? Who's seen it? What's going on?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think, and I suppose Twitter as well is a challenge in that respect. Like, it does get you to be concise and to say what you need to say in a very short space. And I think I just struggle with it because I'm not particularly articulate, and I can't think fast. So, I feel like it takes me longer than most people to write a tweet. In terms of mental energy, I resent it more than I appreciate it.
Would you prefer to have a person that did it for you?
Yeah, if I trusted them if they got if they were on the same wavelength and they got what I was trying to say, then yes, please. That'd be nice.
Yeah. So I want to say something here. Like, I want to bring up, you kind of work with rural communities and rural mental health as well, but I want to sort of also tie that back to sort of working from home and working online and isolation. I mean, I don't know if we want to also discuss digital inclusion. I don't know if that sort of comes into the well-being agenda of like, well, I suppose it does, in that if you're creating all these messages for people to be well and to be healthier and live healthier lives and to look after themselves and their minds better, then you also need to reach those people. But if you're doing it all online, then you're not reaching those people. So can you talk a little bit around that?
Yeah, I think certainly I'm guilty, and a lot of other kind of organizations and people are guilty of assuming that everyone is digitally included and forgetting that some people don't have the capacity. They're not on board with it yet, but I think there's there is a role for I think there is a positive role for technology in terms of motivating people. People are, they're a lot more upskilled, and there's loads of people that really value learning how to use Zoom and use email and use social media. And they've been forced to do that through COVID and through having to work from home. And that's good. I agree that people need to be included, but I still think that, there's so many roles that are manual roles, practical roles, public facing, customer facing, they just don't, they're not sat at a screen 8 hours a day. And
yeah, it's hurting my eyes at the moment. Keep talking, just ignore me.
Yeah. So I think, so I was saying I've been guilty of putting stuff out through email, through my digital newsletters, through my digital events, and thinking, well, this is available to everyone. It's free. It's up to them whether they come. But whereas if I was being honest, I would be actually acknowledging the fact that no, a small cafe owner is not going to be able to attend a webinar at 12 noon. That's the busiest time. They're going to be on the shop floor. Those construction workers, they're out digging up the road. They're not going to be attending either. And if you're really honest about it, you end up thinking, you end up realizing that the people who might need this support and this knowledge the most aren't the ones who are getting it. The people you're getting are the people in many ways are already privileged. They've already.
Yeah, you're sort of preaching to the choir.
Yeah, exactly. And they're, if they can afford to take an hour out to attend my webinar, they're already working, often they're working from home. They're enjoying the flexibility of that. And that's great. But there's lots of people who haven't been able to work from home. They're required to be out. They need to be out. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how you make sure that those people are included, but I'm sure it's you're more likely to reach people if you do something face to face, if you go out to them, if you rather than just sit here enjoying the ease of my spare room. So I think there's so many pros and cons of it all. And, loads of people have felt more included through doing things virtually, people with physical disabilities and people with social anxieties. They've just really thrived in that safety of their own home and not having to interact socially. So it works for some people. I don't know what the answer is, because you can't please everyone all the time. But I think it's important that you at least offer a range of different things and approaches, so that you're making as much effort as you can to be accessible to everyone, and not to just. I think it's that making that blind assumption, just forgetting that there are people who can't access things online, and is the main problem. As long as you're aware of it, then you'll do what you can, or even if it's just, reminding someone, when you send an email, could you just make sure that people who don't have access to email hear this in some form? It might not come from me directly, but just making sure that you're mentioning it is important.
Yeah. So I'm thinking now, what we haven't covered in terms of my questions. So we've done COVID, we've done social media, done Brexit, done climate change. Have I got another one?
You've done UBI.
Have we not done UBI yet?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well done. So, if there was a universal basic income, how would that affect your role? Do you think you would still do the role? Would you maybe cut down your hours, or would you up your hours? Because it's like, well, I've got more money coming in now for the project for myself. Now I can dedicate more time to it. Like, how do you think it would affect you?
I don't know. I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't work more. I would probably want to carry on working, but a bit less. I feel like for me, the split needs to be majority of my time not working. So I think for 4 days rest, 3 days work might be ideal. I definitely need something to get up for, something to motivate me. I mean, I feel like, when you're doing the job, when you're working for a charity, you're already getting that kind of feel good advantage.
Yeah, you're working for something where the meaning is more than money.
Yeah, exactly. And that for lots of people that gives you meaning, and that's important. And I would continue, I think that wouldn't change. So I need that. I need to be doing something of value, something I feel like is worthwhile. But yeah, I just like the idea of the shift in power, I guess, that where you do something because you want to do it, not because you need to do it, and because someone's telling you need to do it and when you need to do it. So I would really thrive with that sense of autonomy, I think.
I mean, it seems foolish to me, you spend 150 years improving productivity to the level that we've got now, and the machines that we've got now that can do the things that they can do now. And then they're like, oh, but let's bring back 12-hour work days. It's like, you should be working till you drop. Why? We have all these incredibly powerful, like, labor multiplying devices and, like, magnifying devices. And it's kind of like, why should we be just working more? But then equally, lots of people, they are getting their meaning from their work in terms of what they're doing. Like it could be a commercial enterprise, but they really believe in what they're doing. Want to spend a lot of time on it because it's their project and it's something that they want to develop. And it's like, this is what I'm really into. So, at the same time, you don't want to sort of stop them from doing that. But also, I think you should you do need to switch off. You do need to delineate. You do need to, like, there should be a distinction between work and rest. And yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this. So I've talked before about kind of leisure time becoming sort of laborized. It's like, it's work to have leisure time now. Like, you've got to watch this TV show and you've got to go to this place. And it's like, I shouldn't have a to-do list of things that's supposed to be my relaxation time.
Yeah. I know what you mean. It's exhausting. Yeah, it's exhausting, the pressure that you put on yourself to maximize the value of all your time. And I don't know, I don't know what the answer is. I can't imagine, when you just, because when you're so into a system, it's so a part of your life, you can't really separate, you can't imagine what it's like any differently. Sometimes when I have I crave for a weekend where I have nothing planned. It's so nice to just look at the calendar and think, oh God, yeah, we've got a weekend coming up where there's nothing. We're not seeing anyone. We're just, we can do whatever we want. And when that does happen, sometimes when I'm thinking, oh, it's a bit boring. Like, it's like we've lost the ability to do nothing and to be satisfied with doing nothing. And even though that it's good for your health just to rest, it's like we've got it drilled into us that we have to be on the go and we have to be seeing people and doing things. And but then other times when I've had a really full weekend and I've thought, oh, this is going to be a really busy weekend, it's going to be exhausting. It actually feels like the weekend's lasted longer because we've put so much into it and it's been more positive. So honestly, I don't really know what the answer is, but I get you. I think you're right. Like, there's definitely a pressure to be making the most out of it. Produce. It's
like, no, don't. Chill, sit down, relax, enjoy it for a moment if you can.
I know. And I feel like, often, like, having things to do around the house is that's the worst. When you just can't relax in your own house because you're aware of all the stuff that he's doing. Like, I definitely feel that, and sometimes I feel I can't relax completely unless I've left. I've gone out. I need to get out.
Proper holiday vacation, like away. Get out.
Yeah. And that's not good. We're very privileged. I mean, I'm very privileged to have a really nice house, a nice personal space that I should be able to enjoy being in. And it's crazy to have to feel that you can't relax there.
I mean, I would say this is still kind of media and social media related and sort of, it's kind of advertising, consumer culture led. But I think a lot of that is screen time. And, like parents now most parents will be like, oh, screen time, a certain amount of screen time or whatever. But do we do that with ourselves? And we're like, it's like, you can only have 2 hours on the PlayStation. I'm going to play on it all night. And then I'm going to watch like non-stop streaming. And it doesn't affect me because I'm an adult and, I'm fine. But your brain's developing, so we have to protect you. So
yeah,
our brains are working and we need to protect them and look after them as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think I'm not actually that bad at screen time because I don't like it. I know, I feel like I have that, I know what effect it has on me and it's not positive. I hate that feeling of having, 2 hours go by and just think, what have I done? I've been on Facebook like all this time. So I don't, and I think also having like a young child is really helpful in that respect because you just, you do your best to spend quality time with them and that often just, it's reading books and it's playing and it's not sitting in front of the screen. So I don't think I'm as bad as some people. Again, not wanting to judge, but I feel like I have a better control over it than some people do. I've got family members who just so weak. It feels like they're weak to the power of the computer and the social media. Whereas I feel like I've somehow managed to build up some resistance to it and not let it kind of control my life too much.
Yeah. But I think you go through phases of it as well. Of like, you get drawn back into it, something draws you back in. I mean, if you didn't have to do it for work, do you think you would actually spend any time on social media, or do you think it'd be sort of minimal kind of family stuff? Or
minimal. I would no.
Yeah.
No, I can't stop. I really hate it. I hate reading the news online.
The trending stuff. Here's what you should pay attention to. I don't want to pay attention to that. Don't tell me about it.
No, I'm useless at it. I think that's the problem. I can't interact on WhatsApp. It takes me ages to compose a reply to something on WhatsApp. And by that point, the conversation's moved on. It's just it doesn't suit me. It's a way of communicating with people. I'm not funny. A lot of people can think of really quick, funny replies to things, which I can't. So my replies are always deadly boring. I think, it's just not... It's just not for me.
You feel like you're sort of like, just tone killing it. Like,
it'd be better for everyone if I just said,
just sit and enjoy, just sit and watch. Read the funny comments.
Yeah.
So I've got a question on change in the workplace. So this is another kind of carte blanche question. So if you could change any 3 things about your work, so like starting today, so it's kind of like 3 wishes, what would you change?
I would have a little team. I think I just spend it's only me and in doing my project, and it's quite lonely. So I would definitely have a small team, someone to help with my communications, the social media side, which I'm, it's not a strength, and someone to help, just to go out and about with, to kind of just support that we can work together. I really feel like I'm not as creative as I could be, and not as confident as I could be if I just had more people to bounce things off.
Yeah, I mean, you get that kind of, you're getting validation in what you're doing, you're getting to share the load, you're getting more ideas and tips, and people can, sort of carry on with the project that you might not have time for because something urgent's come up. And
and people can give you criticism, which is really important, really useful feedback. I don't get much feedback, and I'm someone who wants I want to keep improving. I definitely appreciate it when people say, this could be better, or have you thought about this angle instead, or, just it. And I don't get that enough. So, and I suppose linked to that would be, is essentially more money. It always comes down to money. More money to increase the team, to increase my pay. That's an important factor. I much as I feel ashamed to admit it, but I often just, when I know about the disparities in pay in different sectors, and I know how hard I work for a charity on my charity salary that is a publicly commissioned service where, you know, all the terms and conditions that public sector workers get and the better pay that they get. It does get to me sometimes. I just think charities are doing stuff on the cheap, and they're really relying on that goodwill and the commitment of the workforce there to deliver. But it's not really fair. You know, it's not that we're less qualified. It's not that we're less able. Sorry.
No, it's good. No, it's good. I want to get you on to. Basically, so I think it's the kind of hand it over to you point, but I want to get into sort of the things that, or particular areas that you kind of feel quite passionately about, and the things that you enjoy, and the sort of wins from the job. Like, what are the kind of things that you've done in the time that you've been in this role, where you feel like that's a real, you know, we're moving forward here. We've done something. Is it getting into a particular workplace, or getting a particular employer to come on board, or what have been the really good things that have been really positive for you?
I think it's really nice to see that I've managed to, that a conversation that an employer has had with me has led to some kind of positive change for them and their staff, or how they operate. And it doesn't, you know, it does happen, but on a very kind of gradual, kind of
glacial pace.
Yes. I'm sure that my impact is there, but sometimes it's very hard to actually pinpoint where the impact is, and you know, it might be years down the line and I never know about it. But when I do get something tangible through, you know, like someone saying, we had this discussion, I found it really helpful, I've gone away and we've now got a mental health strategy, and you know, we're working on this, we're giving it strategic priority, you know, or something even much smaller. Like someone might say to me, oh, you know, we had that discussion. Then I decided to put out a blog to my staff about my experience of depression. You know, you gave me the confidence to do that, and I know why it was important to do that. So I did it, and this is the response that I got. And now, you know, someone else has come forward saying that they want to share their experience. Little things like that. It is really nice to know that what is just could just be a nice conversation is being translated into action that has some effect. And I guess, I mean, that it does happen, but not as often as it would be nice to happen. I'm just trying to think of what else. I guess sometimes I get employers to contribute blogs to for our newsletter and for our website, and it's just really nice to read those and to hear how much employers genuinely care for their staff. And there's a lot of bad practice out there, but there is also a lot of really caring people really doing what they can to make their work a positive experience for their staff, you know, really appreciating their responsibility to provide people with good work that is actually positive for people's mental health and their families. You know, there's such a massive knock-on effect. If someone's happy at work, then they're happy going home to their families, and their kids are getting, you know, more attention from their parents. And you know, it's massive. The effects of good work are huge, and equally the effects of bad work are huge. So I think it's just really uplifting often to be reminded of how much a lot of employers genuinely care, and you know, the lengths that they go to really support people when they're going through a bad time, and to not judge people, and to you know, try and get rid of the stigma that's attached to mental health. So I find that really rewarding, even, you know, whether I've had the impact there or not, it doesn't really matter. But if I can share it, if someone contributes a blog to me and goes to the trouble of writing down something, you know, in their very busy roles to send to me, to get out to other employers, that's really, really nice. And it makes me think that, you know, there is this value here for what we're doing. And then if you get someone else reading the blog and saying, you know, this is really powerful, thank you, it's a bit of a boost again. But you just really want, I think it's you want to know that what you're doing isn't for nothing. And you just need to get that feedback somehow.
Yeah, and it's really difficult in your position because you're kind of, it's like you're a hub, you're the sort of a centralized hub for information. So you're connecting employers and stuff, but the people that you're trying to reach are their employees.
Yeah.
So who you have no access to whatsoever because you're kind of walled off from them. So it's like, am I doing anything here?
Yeah.
What are my metrics? Like, how many people am I actually hitting? So I suppose unless you're getting from those employers of like, oh, well, we've done a wellness survey recently and like we compared it to last year and people feel that these things are better, they feel happier and this, that, and the other. Yeah. And I think another key thing, like a couple of key things for me there of when you were talking, firstly, pay and conditions, because we talk a lot now about the conditions, but it's like, an employer's sort of like, oh, well, we want we want the well-being and we want the wellness for our workforce and so on. And it's like, have you thought about paying them more? Like maybe that would make them more motivated and happier and make their lives easier at home and so on. And I know there's all sorts of arguments of this, that, and the other, but it's like, that seems to be missing from the conversation a lot. And the other side of it is the kind of, like you say, with employers who, there is a lot of genuine interest. Like, I don't think all of that is just cynical kind of bandwagon jumping and like buzzwords. And like, there are a lot of people who genuinely do want to care about their workforce, do want to care about their employees and, colleagues, and do care about each other. But there is always that reality of when it comes down to it, and the economic reality is like, we have to fire you or whatever. So there's always that tension there. But even if you think back to sort of Victorians, like they weren't bothered about their workforce. Like you might get a Titus salt or whatever, but it's, even then you can say a lot of that's cynical and it's just about improving productivity. So it's that argument of, if we treat people better, will we get better people and better performance and better results? And is that the best way to do it? Or do we just scrape together whatever we can and just focus on getting some profits in? So it's a lot of, and then the good workplace, bad workplace thing of, so it's like, how are we defining what a good workplace is, and a good workplace for who and at what level, and what is a bad workplace and why is it bad? And so there's so much involved in it. And then there's like you trying to sort of move the whole conversation along in an office working on your own.
Yeah, I know, it's an impossible task.
It doesn't really feel like the right amount of resources are being applied to it.
No, you're right. It's a big task, and I've got to be realistic. I think, I've constantly got to be realistic, remind myself to be realistic about what I can achieve in this role. It's very little, it's very much breadth rather than depth. And that's not why, I don't really like working like that. I'd rather work in depth with someone to make sure that it is not just tokenistic. You're right. Like so many employers will be jumping on the well-being, wellness kind of bandwagon and making it just a PR exercise. And I've got to be aware of that. And, it's even in the nice blogs that people give me, I'm very pleased to get them. But, there's something in it for them too. It's promoting themselves. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I think,
But it should be a win-win, shouldn't it? It should be like, well, you are actually genuinely doing this, and that's a win for you that they're doing this, and they get to promote that they are doing this, tell other people, which is a win for them in terms of publicity, but it's also, like brand awareness, but also in attracting people, attracting the staff and the kind of talent that they want, and building the kind of culture that they want.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's it. It's fine that, as long as it's genuine enough, and both, and there is that it's fine for it to be win-win. And because the more employers that do treat their staff well, the more they will attract the better staff, or the staff that are going to be more motivated to work for them, be more productive, like you say. And other employers, we would hope, that see that happening, think, well, we need to change too. We need to up our game so that we don't lose our staff. And so you'd hope that as a movement, it does gain momentum through little acts, like little activities like that, like just putting out a blog or promoting what you're doing. And I don't, I know that businesses are, essentially it is about profit, and I don't want to be too idealistic, but I do think there must be somewhere also that you can have both. You can be motivated by profit, but you can also be motivated through your kind of ethical, moral kind of sense of responsibility, and they don't have to be at odds with each other.
UBI. I mean, because if you've got that benchmark, the thing is, there's just like, if you haven't got a family, or your family don't like you or something, it's like if you're not working and you're not bringing in the right amount of money to pay for your outgoings, you're out on the street, and yeah, that's not to put out, like, sort of disregard all of the great work that people do in terms of like trying to sort of alleviate homelessness and kind of bring people back into, bring people out of homelessness. But at the same time, that's always kind of looming threat, isn't it? It's kind of, well, you're not going to eat, or you're not going to be able to heat your house, or you're not going to be able to keep your house, and it's kind of, if that was removed and people had a bit more freedom and power to kind of, well, I don't want to take that job because it's really nasty and it won't do me any good, or I am going to take that job because I need something that like really shakes me up and I need to kind of work hard or whatever. But you would have more choice.
Yeah,
I think. So that's why I advocate for you.
Yeah, but how realistic is it? I was at one point a bit more informed about it, but I don't know where are the where are we at?
I'm not going to pretend that I can do any sort of intricate kind of like actually arguing for it. But, at this point, I think a prime point there in terms of your work-life balance of saying, 3 days a week would kind of be your ideal. I mean, my ideal would be a 24-hour week. So doing 5 hours a day. 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. That would be my sort of ideal. So I've got something kind of every day.
Yeah.
But it's not too much.
Yeah.
And it's like, we need to be working less anyway. We need to be producing less. We need to be maintaining more, and we need to be regenerating more. We need to be sort of bringing nature back, kind of thing. And instead it's this focus on, well, grind, work harder, hustle, do this. It's just like, how is this helping? But at the same time, I'm not saying like we should all sit around on our backsides not doing anything, watching TV. It's like, because that's no good for you either. You need activity, you need variety, you need to do things, but you also need to not do things. So,
what do you think? What role do you think there's value in, like, there's a lot of companies some companies are now becoming 4-day week companies.
Yeah, I'm well into that. 4-day week, I think, is brilliant. I worked a 4-day week for a while, and it was great.
Yeah.
And it gave me time to sort of work on another project. I had a 3-day weekend, which was fantastic. Weekends are not long enough.
No.
And the working week is far too long. And it's crept as well. Like, I noticed, sort of, because I was out of Leeds for a good while. And when I started sort of working in the mid to late 90s, it was very much, you sort of standard office hours of 9 to 5, probably an hour for lunch, probably get paid for that hour for lunch. And this is in like, basic sort of starter wage positions and so on. And now you'd be doing an extra half hour on either side that's crept in. You might get a half-hour lunch. You don't get paid for the lunch. And then, like little things taken away. It's like the chipping away of your power and also your material wealth, like in a very real way. And it's kind of insidious. And then we end up just sort of working more to consume more, to just And it's like, but loads of people are stepping back or do step back or are looking for a kind of, well, if I could just have this, it's like you spend a lot of time thinking about what could I really subsist on? Like, what's the lowest amount that I need to have to be able to actually do something that I want to do? And yeah, and then it comes back to that sort of race to the bottom thing.
Yeah. What I like about the 4-day week scheme, though, is that they have to commit to not the actual take-home pay is not reduced, is it? Which is really important. I think it's.
Well, I mean, that's a good way to get a pay rise and to get a boost in productivity at the same time, because we know that, you know, and like I'm sure loads of people who went through lockdown realized that they could be way more productive, but also by doing less sort of thing. I'm like, well, I'm actually using this time for work and I'm not using it to kind of avoid work or go and have a chat or think about something else. It's like, if I need to think about something else, I'll go do that. I'll come back. And then that's not non-work time. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm so much more productive when I've got a short period to work in. When I've got the whole day ahead of me, I've got 8 hours. I don't use that. I'm not productive in that. But if I've got 3 hours, I'll use every minute of those 3 hours.
Yeah.
And then I've got 5 hours to just, to do something for myself, but be satisfied that I've achieved what I needed to for work. I think certainly, like that. I think that is such a thing we've got to get over in our minds, is the fact that is that assumption that hours spent at a computer is productive hours.
Yeah.
And, we just need to abandon that. We need to just trust people to get their work done in however, as long as the outcome is good, then what does it matter how many hours they've spent doing it? Yeah. I think there's also something around, equality issues again, like, it's so much more acceptable, socially acceptable for women to take part-time roles because we have the acceptable reason of having childcare. And, the result is that a lot of women do work part-time and for really low pay. And I think it's on both sides. I feel like it's not fair. Like, surely everyone should be able to say, I want to work part-time. It doesn't have to be something reserved to parents and carers. And men should feel that they aren't going to be sniggered at for saying, I want to work, 4 days and whatever it is. I just feel like, I know so many people who are working full time who just don't have a young child to use as a justifiable reason to go part time. And why does it have to be like that? Why isn't it enough to say, I just want more time for myself? And yeah, I don't know. I feel like as a woman, I'm privileged in that respect, in the norm, in how normal it is for people in my position to work part time. So it's much more acceptable. But at the same time, you have to accept that you're going to get a massive pay cut, and there's only certain roles that are available part time. And it's not just a case of working less. You're getting low pay in the.
Well, yeah, you're working less, you're earning less, and you're in those roles that. And that limits your sort of future potential earnings as well, because it's like, oh, well, you really want to make the jump from, it's like, I'm basically doing the same job, but because it's a full-time job there and it's a different organization, you're not thinking of me because I did this part-time and I was doing it cheap.
Yeah.
So you are thinking of me, but you want to pay me well under what you were going to offer for the actual role.
Yeah. And it really affects you, like I've thought about, I've looked at other roles that are advertised full time, and I've contacted them and said, look, would you consider taking someone on 30 hours a week to do this? And they still people are really reluctant to consider being a bit creative, just adapting roles, or, and thinking about diversity, like surely that they need to prioritize. Organizations know that diversity is good, and getting a range of people in and it is important. But if you're not willing to be flexible over things like flexible working, you're always going to get the same people at the same stage of their lives, but not always. I mean, obviously that's a massive assumption, but what's the point in restricting opportunities for people just for the sake of it, just because you can't get your head around picturing something a little bit different, and just recognizing like we say that people can be just as productive in less time, and that's such a good thing for everyone if that person is having less time at work, more time to rest, more motivated when they are at work. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, what do you think as well about, so I've worked in kind of workplace learning, lifelong learning, continuing professional development, that kind of thing. And so just in terms of skills and the positive effects that it can have by your employer, or if you're an employer, by investing in the skills and development of your employees. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sort of applicable to the role, but if you're giving them skills in the same way, it's like you're giving them the opportunity to have a yoga class. It's like, well, we'll also train you in this, or we'll give you a new skill in this. And the sort of argument is like, well, what if you train your workers and you leave? And I love the kind of flip side of like, what if you don't train them and they stay? So, I mean, does skills training, anything like that, does that come up in sort of the work that you do and the wellness agenda as it is at the moment? Apologies for using wellness agenda. I'm sorry I said that.
That's fine. Lots of different terms that people use. It doesn't come up as much as it could do, and probably should do. I think you're right, especially when we're thinking about leadership and people getting, having opportunity, progression and opening up
self-confidence as well.
Yeah.
Confidence for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would, and there again, you if you're thinking about self-confidence, is that a career? Is that something to help someone's career, or is it something to help their well-being and their mental health? And the two are so entwined. You can't. It doesn't matter how you package it. You can package it however you want, but at the end of the day, if you're helping someone to improve their confidence, they're going to be feeling better at work and in the rest of their life, and feeling better mentally. And I think it's, again, it could be really good. I don't know why. I think it must be, it must be perhaps financial, that at the end of the day, a yoga class is going to be, it's some outlay, but it's not that much outlay. You're doing something that looks nice and it's not costing you too much. Whereas putting someone through a training course that ideally people might want it to be accredited, or it needs to have some worth to it, that's probably going to cost you more. and like you say, that person might leave. So what, was it worth it?
But if they leave and you've trained them and you're like, oh, well, we spent a fortune on them, they might come back.
Yeah.
And they might come back with a whole bunch of other skills, and they might stay this time because it's like, I've worked in all these other places and they never did anything for me. It's like, you guys, I always remember you guys, because if it hadn't been for you, I'd never been able to do X, Y, Z. Like,
yeah, I think often employers maybe do offer support to those sorts of things more than staff realise, and it's an opportunity. It's something that needs publicising more. And I know, I'm just remembering now, because I did, in a past role, I did a master's part-time while working full-time, and my employer actually contributed a bit to my fees, even though it wasn't related to my work. It wasn't in any way, a requirement or linked to my work directly, but it was just something that I happened to read about on our internet, that they had this fund for study. And, it wasn't much, but it really meant something, that I really appreciated it, because it was just a small charity, but the fact that they could give me 1,000 towards my fees a year was just really nice. So I think it doesn't have to be much. It's not really about the quantifying it. It's about the gesture, and that the value that it shows that they put on you as a whole person, and not just seeing you as someone to be productive in your very narrow role for the time that you're with that certain company. Yeah, I think that because learning is so good for your well-being, isn't it? You know, that competence, feeling competent, it gives you the confidence, it enlightens you, it broadens your horizons, so many benefits. So I think there's I think that there's an opportunity to really broaden people's understanding of well-being and move from looking at yoga and running clubs and to other things, and really think about what it means to be happy and to be content and what you need for that. And it's different for everybody, but yeah. To listen to people, and you know, to not impose stuff, not say, well, you know, we think this is good for you, so we're going to give you this. That doesn't work. I mean, time and time again, these initiatives fail because they've been imposed from the top. They haven't been asked for. They haven't come from a place of listening. So you know, I think employers just need to really, first and foremost, listen to their staff, know what their staff need and want, and then take it from there. And you know, often their money would be better spent in different ways, like and also not everything costs money. You know, often you find these big employers with huge well-being budgets just splashing out on things here, there and everywhere. And then the basics, like their line management skills, are terrible, and they don't know how to actually have conversations with their staff. You know, what's the point? It doesn't make sense that money could be just given away to a charity or something. Forget the money. You don't need to spend money if it's not going to have some genuine use, but really invest your time in where it's needed, which is, you know, often it's not about particularly expensive things. It's kind of the basic interpersonal skills that you need to conduct healthy relationships with people.
Yeah. I want to get you to kind of talk a little bit about this. So kind of relentless positivity, and then going back to the sort of social media stuff of this kind of everyone's happy, everyone's successful, everyone's beautiful all of the time, and like we're all great and we're all so positive and we're all happy, and like, oh, you're having a bad day, but be happy anyway. Think about a nice thing, and like, you know, the image of happiness, the image of wellness, and the like, I think that there's a level in the sort of toxic positivity, I think is the term that I've heard to describe it, of like just so much relentless, like, yeah, be happy, that it you know, it can overwhelm people and just be like, oh, I'm not interested in any of that. It's making me so depressed. So just sort of, I want to get your take on how happiness and wellness and health is kind of perceived, and, you know, like, what is the place for being upset and being miserable and so on within there? Like, how, yeah, I just want to get you to sort of comment on that.
Yeah, I think I find it really annoying that certainly the social media element, but again, I feel I feel like I don't get influenced too much by people's positive images on social media, because I know it's all fake. Very often it's so, but I think it's really dangerous. And I've had some really interesting conversations with employers who tell me that everyone's happy in their organization. You know, they've got a lovely, loving family culture. You know, everyone belongs, everyone gets on. They've got their pool tables, they've got their bean bags, and you know, this is just a happy place. And then you say to them, well, that's great, but you know, the statistics say that 1 in 4 people will suffer a mental health problem, you know, at some point in their lives. 1 in 6 workers currently are experiencing poor mental health. Where do you fit that? Do you think that, do you feel that doesn't apply to you, you know, in your company? Or is it the fact that because you've created this super happy veneer that people wouldn't even feel comfortable to opening up and telling you if they were feeling really depressed, you know, and the fact that that you're putting pressure on people to have this, to really kind of put on this positivity all the time, is surely going to make people's mental health when people are struggling even worse, because they can't even be honest about it. And they feel they've got to put up this front to pretend everything's fine because that's the culture and they need to fit in. It's stifling. And I think, you know, if you deny, and some of these companies will say, they'll be really uncomfortable talking about mental health. They're really comfortable talking about well-being and wellness, but not mental health. And mental health just doesn't have a place. It's something uncomfortable. It's something ugly and doesn't apply because they've put all this resource into creating such a happy environment. And that's just very naive and dangerous, because, when people are struggling, they need to be able to talk about how they're feeling. They need to access help. And if you're not creating a space where they're comfortable doing that, then it's only going to get worse. So I think there is, I'm guilty of always trying to see the bright side of things. It's my coping mechanism. Certainly, it is how I operate. I hate, if I feel down about something, what clicks in straight away is, what have I got to be thankful for? It's not that bad. I need to just, appreciate what I've got. And that does help me, I think. But I do think that there is a balance to be struck, and we have to just be honest. Like, sometimes we all just have bad, really bad days or really bad experiences, and life is full. No one has a perfect life. Everyone suffers relationship breakdowns, bereavements,
disease,
illness, and that really affects our mental health. And we need to acknowledge that this is the norm, and support each other when it happens, not just shut people down and make people think they've got to put on this face, which isn't helpful to anyone, because it, as we know, through what's the point? Where's the value in making other people believe that you're living a perfectly happy life? You're only making them feel they have to do the same. They have to put up a front, and it's
It's like, oh, you're sad. Oh, that's terrible. Why don't you do some yoga and think about some nice things? It's like, well, that's not what I need now. I need something other than that.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you listen to me, then you would know. But then I can see from the other extreme of employers or just people in general just being like, oh God, I don't want to open the floodgates to just like everyone just having a nightmare about everything of like, oh, well, it's made me feel like this because this thing happened and it wasn't a major thing, but I am going to spend 20 minutes to half an hour talking about it and talking about how it made me feel emotional. And you can see that, because there's always people that will play that up, or there's a perception of that at least anyway. So that it's like, well, everyone will just turn into people who are just sitting around moaning about how they feel.
Yeah, but I think I do get those arguments, but I think in reality it's just not how it is. And I think, especially if you're boundaried, like it's not like you just suddenly start saying to people, out of the blue, tell me how you're feeling, I'm here for you. That there are really good support resources there to support you, like mental health first aid is, when it's done well, can be really powerful and really effective in providing a safe space for people to open up. But crucially, being able to signpost people to support that isn't necessarily in-house support. It's not you talking for an hour to your manager. It's about your manager really listening, for listening, but not for too long, really getting to the being able to pinpoint what support this person is looking for, what would help them, and then directing them where they need to go. No one is asking an employer to be a mental health professional. They need to be an employer that has a culture which allows people to open up, but then where they have the expertise and the knowledge to direct people to support. And I think there's some really good tools, like they're called wellbeing action plans or wellness action plans that managers can do with their staff, and it's like a joint kind of form that they can complete. But it's really focused on preventing or like nipping things in the bud. So identifying what triggers or what stresses might affect people's mental health, and then thinking, well, how is that likely to affect performance at work, and then what can we put in place to kind of support that or mitigate that. And I think if you look at it in terms of I think it sometimes helps for employers to see it as what can we do to help you do your job? That essentially the employer's not there as a counsellor. The employer's there to employ you to do your work. So you can be you can be very supportive around how you approach those conversations, but essentially your role is to help people be well enough to do their work at work.
And safe enough at work to be able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of misconception around, these conversations and often, it's employers that actually have been resistant to doing mental health first aid training that spend even more time than necessary supporting people. They actually, I was talking to an employer one day who said that one of his managers had been on the foot, frantically trying to call one of his staff's GP to try and get them an appointment. And I was thinking, when is it ever appropriate for an employer to be trying to get in touch with someone's GP? That a lot of it is about boundaries and knowing and being confident, telling someone that their health is actually their responsibility. And, you can be there to support them and to help them, direct them where they need to go. But taking responsibility for your own health is really important. And, what I'm saying is sometimes if the employers aren't as well informed as they can be, they can end up doing far more than is actually necessary and actually helpful. And that's a kind of misconception that is often that often arises. It's not about doing everything for people. It's not about sitting for hours listening. It's just, if it's done well, it can be very targeted and very effective. So,
And then again, to me, that again comes back to a sort of skills thing, because it's kind of like you need to train up the people. I am going to wind it up soon. You need to train up the people that have the skills that can deliver those outcomes that and have the experience as well. Like, they need to have been in workplaces where it's like, okay, well, we've taken this on board, we applied it in this way, this worked, this failed, this didn't. I've gone on to another place, I've refined that. Now there's a whole body of people who have experience of like being able to go into a workplace and make that culture kind of work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You see, it's like you're kind of starting the conversation, but what it needs is like with sort of champions and stuff to go on and to embed that and to make that work and keep going and to refine it and to make it part of the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And it needs to be given weight at a strategic level. I think often you get what you get is really key individuals who are just so passionate about something, about say mental health, but it could be something else. They really take a lead. They do the training for themselves. They're great, but it's just one person. And when they leave, there's nothing left. I'm always very wary of people that just, that not wary because they're doing a great job, but if they're on their own, if they're the only person within their organization fighting for mental health and they're not in a particularly senior position, it's risky because there's a lot of pressure on that individual and it's just never going to be sustainable. What they need is it fully embedding as an approach from the, given that weight from the top and there is these mental health champions roles and mental health first aid is they can be a really important part of that overall approach, but certainly not on their own. They need a lot of support. There's structures that structures need to be in place to check that they're okay, that they're not on. And so, I think there's a lot of learning from a lot of it is trial and error, and you do learn from doing things wrong. And as long as you can reflect and make improvements, I think that's just part of the process. But you can make use for, and I suppose that's what I hope to get from our network is to save people some of that time by sharing, getting employees who have been doing it for a long time or who have learned from their mistakes to share, their learning. So other employees can pick it up quicker and avoid some of those mistakes themselves. So I think it's about upskilling and sharing that learning, but also is that embedding is so important, and taking it seriously at the highest level, committing to doing it properly, not just something tokenistic, or not relying on one person's, energy in this one particular area. It's
So I'm going to get you to do, all your promotions, any socials, any things that you want listeners to check out. So where should people go to find out more?
If you go to the Leeds Mind website, you'll see a tab there, help for employers, and under that you'll see Mindful Employer. Look at that webpage. There's an option there to sign up to join the network. You can learn more about Mindful Employer as an initiative, which is actually a national initiative. So that I haven't really talked about that today, but
so I want to get you to say a little bit more about it if you can as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Mindful Employer is a national initiative to promote, mental health, a positive approach to mental health at work, and it's coordinated through the NHS in Devon. But there's thousands of companies, employers, businesses around the country who have committed to being positive about mental health and signed the Mindful Employer Charter, which has, I think it's 6 charter points, and it's aspirational. So it's not about having an end point and reaching it, which a lot of kind of charter marks are. It's basically just saying that you're committed to keep working on your approach to mental health, and keep trying to tackle stigma, trying to promote inclusion. And so it's a very gentle one for employers to sign up to, really. And if you were being cynical, you'd say, oh, this is, it's too easy. People can just do it and not actually have anything to show for it. But I think on the whole, especially for small businesses who don't have massive budgets, it's a really nice indication that you care about mental health. You're willing to take it seriously enough to commit to signing this charter. And it's a sign to your staff and prospective staff that you're not perfect. You're not there. There's no end point, but you're going in the right direction, and you believe, your beliefs are positive around including people and understanding mental health.
Yeah, and you're declaring that publicly as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be very effective for your public image and what the assumptions people make about you when they see that. So that's Mindful Employer. So you can, but locally, my project is commissioned through Public Health in Leeds City Council to run the local Mindful Employer network. So within that network, there are the registered mindful employers who've signed the charter, but there are others that haven't yet signed, and it's my job to encourage them to get on board with that. So go on our website, please, join the network, join our Facebook group, and start interacting and learning from other employers on there, sharing your own experiences.
Is that sort of, like you say, is that for any kind of company of any size? And like, are you looking for any kind of particular industries? Like, do you want to try and, is part of the remit of that is to try and get, say, well, we need a company in every sector that's signed on, or is it just?
Ideally, we really want to increase the diversity of the network. We've got nearly 400 local employers in the network at the moment, but it's not, that's not an even spread of all the industries. So we are particularly targeting, given the current kind of cost of living crisis that we're in and the financial strains that people are going to be under, we're particularly targeting those businesses that don't have much resource themselves to put to this, don't have massive training budgets and wellbeing budgets, but would appreciate some free support. And we're also particularly focusing on industries that are more likely to be paying the lowest wages. Those sectors that rely on minimum wage jobs often, and 0 hours contracts, those least secure roles. And, even it's not that we're going to say to employers, oh, you need to stop using 0 hours contracts. We appreciate that's it's a really necessary way of employing people sometimes in certain sectors, but there are still ways of using 0 hours contracts that are more positive for people's well-being. Very small changes that you can put in place to increase that sense of security that people might have. So we're thinking particularly retail, hospitality sectors, Also sectors that predominantly might employ male workers because of the links with suicide. Yeah, but we're definitely open to everyone. And if you're an employer that is just vaguely interested, even just a tiny bit interested in any of this, this is a place for you, because it's not intimidating. It's it's a very safe place.
Yeah, it's like an easy first step to make.
Yeah. And we have a 10 steps toolkit, which again is the toolkit that you can access online, that is designed to be a very gentle kind of introduction as well, to guide you through some of the steps that you can take to start working on this. And I can come out and meet with employers to run through the toolkit and to share ideas and discuss different ways of approaching things.
And is it all calm, or is there also a space for shouting and smashing plates?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have to keep the conversation respectful, but that means that there's still scope for people to voice their anger, and I think that's important. But no sales. That's the only thing. We have to be quite picky sometimes over what we can promote, because it can't be seen as a platform to
advertise and
Thank you again to Laura for being my guest. Thanks again to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. And of course, most of all, thanks to you, my dear listener. Come back on Monday to hear me talk to John Stewart from the RMT. Okay, that's me. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. If you're listening to this, I assume you have some connection to Leeds, like living here or being from here. If you're such a person in Leeds or from Leeds and you haven't done your recording for Working Hours yet, then don't wait. Email me at workinghourspod@western-studios.com and let's arrange some time to record your Working Hours interview. If you want to be a guest on the show, put guest in your subject line and add a short bio in your message along with some indication of your availability. I will need a 2-hour window for us to record in. I can record in your work time or during your downtime. I have been recording interviews for Working Hours for over a year on Zoom, but I can record offline as well. How do you feel about work? What do you like and not like about your work? You can be on Working Hours anonymously, or you can promote yourself, your company, or your brand. Cleaner or owner, what is your experience? Have your voice heard for a change. Share your wisdom with people who want to hear it for a change. Give us the inside skinny on what's happening in your industry. Loiners, what are you doing in the world? What is Leeds doing most of the time? Be a part of local history. Be on Working Hours. This is your show, Leeds. It's all about what you are making and have made of yourself and of our city. Do you even know what you're doing? If you think you do, then come and tell me about it. Come on Working Hours, even if you don't know what you're doing. I certainly don't. Email me right now. Quick, get a pen. workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you're allowed to do that, that is. If you're not allowed to do that, then maybe sneakily tell me why. You can email this show securely and anonymously via westernstudios@protonmail.com. And I could alter your voice on a recording and keep you anonymous. Come and tell me how awful and dodgy your employer is. If you and your business aren't ashamed of what you do, then let's hear all about it. What good are you doing the rest of us? Are you socially useful? Am I? Is this? Send your feedback, questions, comments and queries right now to workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Follow this show on Twitter @WorkingHours3 and on Instagram @WorkingHoursPodLeeds to find out when new episodes are being released, or to DM me with any questions or comments. Or you can use the hashtag WorkingHoursPodLeeds on either site to find me. I'm on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds, and I'm on LinkedIn. linkedin.com/in/Simon-Treen, or you can go to my company page, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Yes, I have a company of one. To be fair to me, I am the best company that I have ever worked for. If you want to work with me to make a podcast or any digital audio content in Leeds, then get in touch. Whether it's for a cause, for publicity campaigns, product promotions, sales, or just for your own passion projects, then get in touch with me, Western Studios, now. If you're thinking of online audio content creation, then think Western Studios for support, advice, and guidance on getting it made. At Western Studios, you work with a real life learner who is actually in Leeds, who you can actually work with on your digital audio content. Not a piece of software, not a course of articles or a series of live chats and video courses, but me, a person, in physical place-based reality. So don't wade through vapid articles and videos and podcasts about how to make podcasts by disembodied virtual people on the web. Get on with making your podcast now. Then, when it gets hard and expensive and it all goes wrong, which it will, then call Western Studios to make your podcast with you or even for you. Western Studios will take on your podcast's boring, time-consuming and painful admin, recording, editing, transcription, whatever. Tell me about your podcasting pain points and I can make it all better for you. I feel your pain. For a charge, I'll share it. Remember, podcast work is work. Leeds businesses, Leeds campaigns, Leeds brands. Got an inkling that you'd like a podcast but don't know where to start? Hit me up at makemypodcast at western-studios.com and we'll start making your podcast straight away. The first hour of arranged consultation and pre-production time is free, and then I charge £25 an hour after that. I can arrange hefty discounts for the right projects, so tell me your idea and your budget and I'll tell you what I can do for you. What do you have to lose? Time. That's what. Time is running out. Temperatures are rising. The sun's getting real low on humanity now. So make your thing and make it now, because you and all your future ancestors who will now never be will be holding your peace for the rest of forever. The best time to make a podcast was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. Writers in Yorkshire, what are you doing with your lives? Hopefully you're writing. Well, I know there are listeners out there who want to hear great original writing performed as audio content that is about and for and has been made in Leeds. How do I know this? Because I am one of them. Help me make your old screenplays, unpublished novels, unperformed plays, stories, poems, and performances. Whatever you got, baby. Make it as podcast content. Is your work arty, salacious, pulpy, strange? Good. I want to make it into a podcast or audiobook. I get to practice making shows and you get a finished, performed and published version of your writing. Save yourself the hassle and the headache of making your podcast by giving it to me instead. And finally, once again, please let this show, what you're listening to right now, Working Hours, get big and strong by joining its Patreon. Support Working Hours online. Be a champion on Patreon. Don't ask the membership fee. It's £1. For £1 a month, you can really inspire me and motivate me. Maybe one day you'll even cover my costs. Go to patreon.com/working hours pod to sign up, or go to Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/working hours and join me there for £1 a month. Be super awesome and join both. There's a monthly live stream on the Patreon and you can get access to the Working Hours Discord with a Ko-fi membership. So do both. Go crazy. Spend on me like there's no tomorrow. Why not? Your planet is burning. Your house is on fire. Your governments are criminals. The oil industry are maniacs. And bankers are completely insane. We're losing everything. Act like it. Do something new and something different. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Remember to like, share, follow and subscribe to Working Hours. Tell your gran, tell your housekeeper, tell your gardener, tell your parole officer, tell your boss. Tell Leeds, and I'll see thee next time, our kid. Working Hours is presented, edited and recorded by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain, and was taken from museopen.org.